screen.
All right, everyone, it looks like it is 1:30 and we will call the Cumberland County Finance meeting to order. And we will begin with a roll call, please.
Commissioner Nieder.
I am here.
Commissioner Fashi.
I'm here.
Commissioner Eichelberger.
We will open the floor to public comment. Is there anyone showing online? Desiree is indicating they wanted to make public comment. If you are online, please use the raise your hand feature if you'd like to make public comment at this time.
There's no one raising their hand.
All right. We will go on to approve the minutes of the meeting from November 6th.
I'll move to approve.
I will second it. It's moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next up, we have discussion and approval of the letter of support for the Tri-County Housing Development Corporation for the PHFA funding application. And on the line, we have Gary Lanker from Tri-County Housing Development Corporation. So Gary, I will turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, commissioners, and thank you for entertaining our request. When I was before you back in June, and you supported our Choto operating request for our nonprofits' involvement in the Normandy Lofts affordable rental housing development in Shippensburg. I shared with you a number of activities that we have going on, and I did mention to you that we were looking to work with this Tyco site in Carlisle Borough. That has come to fruition. Our partnership with Woda Cooper, who is planning to build 48 affordable rental units on that site. But in addition and separate to that is they're donating sufficient amount of land that we can build 8 townhouse units for sale to low to moderate income families. And our letter that we provided you is supporting our application to PHFA Fair in the amount of $750,000.
Thank you, Gary. Any questions of Gary? I just wanted to say thank you for your efforts. We hear all the time about the need for affordable housing in Cumberland County. The subject came up again today at a function, and so thank you for your efforts. I'm glad you were able to work together with Woda Cooper to hopefully get this project pulled together. So I'm delighted to offer the support, and I would imagine my colleagues feel the exact same way. Would anyone else like to say anything at this moment?
No, but I would move to approve.
All right.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Thank you so much, and you're quite welcome on your comments. We look forward to our continual involvement in creating affordable housing, working with Mary Kuna and her group at the Housing and Redevelopment Authority to create affordable housing throughout Cumberland County. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks.
All right, next up, beautiful graphics too, by the way. Next up, we have discussion and possible motion to lay the 2025 budget on view, and we have Carrie Finkenbein Snow from our finance department.
Good afternoon, commissioners. So we're back to follow up from our November 6th financial analysis committee presentation and to make a request to place the 2025 budget on view. So kind of 2 outstanding items is finance has made a recommendation to increase millage by 7%. The library has also made a recommendation or a request to increase the library millage. So Carrie and I are happy to answer any questions or have discussion on placing the 2025 budget on view.
All right, thank you. I know that Commissioner Eichelberger had some questions that he followed up with. I know I have as well. So the response was shared. Gary, I think we might want to take these items independent of each other. So if we'd like to have a discussion surrounding the library tax at this time, I am open to the conversation or what the board's interest is doing at this time.
Yeah, I just had some additional questions. I don't know that Ron can help or Carrie can help with that regarding the library. I mean, they've asked us for an amount. It seems to be just a sustaining amount. I don't feel we have a really good handle on what it's getting us or for how long. Carolyn's here. Carolyn, I saw your information you just sent me. That you just sent a few minutes ago. I really had to breeze over it, but I guess the question I have is I just want you to confirm, or is the millage you're asking for, and Ron, you and I discussed it the other day, 16%, or I calculated it as 14%, but I did it very rapidly.
So Carolyn has made several requests for recommended changes. I think one was 100% change, 150% change.
Yeah.
Were the two that I saw.
I guess the question I have, Carolyn, is there a long-term, do we know where we land if this is granted, say the last proposal? Is that just a stopgap? I mean, everything's a stopgap essentially, but how long will that last us? The practice since before I got here was for the county to try to do this about once a decade. And that it's less than that, but we understand the inflationary pressures. And I will say it looks like you folks have made I appreciate the information you just sent. It sounds like you folks made a good faith effort to look for reductions where possible. And some of the challenges you're facing are very similar to what the county in general is facing. So I guess the outstanding question for me is this, where does this leave us if this is passed as suggested? And do you have a feel for how long until we're addressing this again?
I will say that was really interesting attending the full finance presentation last week and seeing the tools that are available to the county for projections and such. We don't have that kind of access. We also are dealing with 8 different budgets, my budget and 7-member libraries. So some of that is difficult to predict, but through a series of conversations with our library directors, we feel like the adjustment to a 0.249 millage rate would be enough for us to be able to adjust wages based on market values. That's a huge step for us, and something that we're continuing to study throughout this year to see where we are in relation to others, and to get those positions filled so that libraries, when I talked about hours of libraries being cut, that's not related as much to keeping the lights on. It's being able to staff those libraries. We currently are in situations where, somebody gets sick and then somebody else gets sick and suddenly the library can't be open. We've had libraries have to close for the day because they don't have adequate staffing. Those delayed maintenance repairs that are so crucial. We think at that rate, we will be able to start completing some of those maintenance repairs and getting our buildings in better shape. The upgrading and replacement of technology, it's so unpredictable because costs, range all over the place. But I think I mentioned one of our technology vendors just completely quit on us. And so we're looking for a new vendor, and we're looking at probably spending 2 to 3 times the cost on just that one type of technology. I just found out on Friday that another technology vendor is dropping one of their services that's included in a bundle, and to replace it, last time we looked to replace it, that was an additional $45,000. So there are some variables in there as to whether or not this minimum increase would be sustainable for us or not. But we would do our very best to find things that meet the price point of of what's available to us. So I know that's a non-answer, but I don't have the prediction
but-
tools to really be able to tell. But we do, I mean, all libraries, like I said, we looked at scenarios all over the place and felt like that 2.291 millage rate would be better, but that we could probably function and sustain for a while, a few years on 2.49. But we do reflect back to that 2015 memorandum of understanding that said, you know, we would continue, the county and the library system would continue to look at millage rates, and maybe not put it off every 10 years, to continue to keep an eye on that and what our library is able to do with the funding they're provided.
So, Gary, if,
The mill rate of 0.249 would be a 50% increase.
okay, and the average taxpayer, what does that cost?
$18.43
Okay,
And that's
So-
a year.
annually.
so Carolyn, I feel at a bit of a disadvantage being new to this, and it's my understanding, I think you referenced your boards have been looking at this for about 2 years, and I feel like I've had 2 weeks in which we were also running an election. So I have more questions. I understand you did send an email a minute ago, but questions such as, you talked about capital improvements that need to be made, but we haven't really been presented with a capital plan and what that looks like. There seems to be a fair amount of guessing on what the right number is and what's needed. While I can appreciate there are so many variables and we deal with those in our budget all the time, I feel a bit rushed in this decision today. And I'm not comfortable with that at this point. So it has raised a lot of questions for me. Additionally, I've seen where York County and Dauphin County and other counties have obtained funding for capital projects and things such as that. And I feel like we need to partner perhaps a little bit more to really understand what those needs are and how we can help. But at this juncture, I'm not feeling confident that I have the answers I need to take action on this. So if the other members of the board who have been engaged in the organization longer feel differently, they can certainly, opine. I know, Jean, you've been the liaison, and so probably have, Gary, I don't know if you've done that in the past, but have had probably the closest tie to the finances of the libraries, so.
So, Carolyn, I have been the liaison to the library system now for 5 years. Okay, so I have some nice working knowledge of what is going on. I know that you come in here and you update the commissioners on a quarterly basis on what is going on with the libraries. I know that we have a memorandum of understanding with you, and I know that this county we have given you $100,000 in a conditional grant for at least the 5 years that I have been here. And when I go back through the presentations that you've brought to us, I think a couple of things. And that the first one that I think is that the county has taken some things from the library system and there has been no viable replacement for them. And I'm going to go right to healthcare. So you used to be, right, all the member libraries, everyone was a county employee. There was county health insurance. Dana, you're going to stop me if I get in this too deep, please, to clarify.
So not all of their employees are county employees, but they did have our insurance.
They did have our insurance. And I'm looking at what the cost is for healthcare, what you gave us, Carolyn, and it's a lot. It's a lot. Your member libraries are paying a tremendous amount for healthcare that the county used to cover. And I know that there are reasons why that happened, including that the county went to self-insurance. because it was unaffordable. Health insurance was becoming unaffordable here. But I think about that, how you were kind of, I'm gonna say it, left in the lurch, right? The library system was left to fend for itself. The library system could no longer be part of the county's computer setup because we went to .gov. And so you've kind of been left in the lurch, right? Here were these things that were available to you that helped you to meet your finances for circumstances that I don't think anyone could foresee or could control. Those things were taken away, but there was no replacement. There was no replacement for those dollars. Carolyn, last night I was in the John Graham Library, and I went in, I was already in Newville, I went in, I talked to the librarian again, I looked at that edition that John Graham put on because of County ARPA dollars. And one of the things that stuck out to me the absolute most was that there was a mom sitting at that table with public computers, and she's got a kid on each side. And the one kid is doing his homework right there in the library. If you are a child, if you are a family and you do not have access to a computer, to broadband, to a good connection, you are woefully lost at school. And I could talk to you I could talk for days about all the great things the library does. I am very concerned that we are going to leave you in the lurch again, and you will not be able to provide services. You will not be able to have employees. And one of the things that really bothers me, and I appreciate what you said today before the meeting, really clarifying, for me at least, that you have to be open so many hours. If you're not open so many hours, the state will pull your funding. I don't want you in that position, right? I've talked about this at one of our prior meetings where we've got that same problem in the 911 center, right? You have to answer the phone in a certain number of seconds. If you don't, you're going to lose your state funding. I don't want you in a position where you lose your state funding. I don't want our library system in a position where you are not able to serve the public, because you've also provided all of these numbers of the number of people that use the library, of families, of children, of seniors, of everyone. And so I am in favor of doing something, and I'm going to tell you, Carolyn, I am still in favor of the 0.332 increase. And I think that will right size you. And what I'm hearing you say today is I'm not sure why you're saying it, but I think that what you set forth is we'll scrape by with X, right? If you give us this, I think did you say 0.249 or 0.291?
0.249 is how we felt the minimum amount
that's your
to be able to repair and replace at the basic level.
So I'm going to ask you the question then. At 0.249, can you have a janitor in every facility? Because you don't, and I don't think that's a good way to operate. I don't think 0.249 is enough. If we want to have good libraries in Cumberland County, if we want to have a library system that works for the benefit of the residents here, then it's just not enough. That's my personal opinion. Again, Carolyn, I have been intimately involved for 5 years, right? And I've talked to you about how important libraries are. I've talked with my colleagues about how important they've been to me, particularly as a child. And I've said this before, when I really need to go and think about something, write or learn something, I go down to Hostler and I sit there quietly. This is very important to me, and that would be what I would be in favor of today. And I am open for discussion with my colleagues.
So I will preface my comments. I'm not saying never. I'm not saying I could not be in favor or support of this. I'm simply saying if we're guessing or trying to determine what's the right amount and we don't have adequate information to do that, then it feels to me like this is a bit putting the cart before the horse. We haven't done adequate analysis with Carolyn, and I mean that sincerely, with her to look at those needs and really help hone in. And I appreciate, Carolyn, that the county has certainly pulled some things away from you, and perhaps we haven't done what we could to try and help find replacements for that, or if there's some other way that we can assist. So I just believe at this juncture we're making a lot of suppositions, and Gary, you expressed the concern: is it enough? Is it where is that mark? So I am reluctant on action without having a more defined number that we believe will be accurate.
Let me weigh in here again. So, Carolyn, I think you may be absolutely right that the 10-year period that we've historically used is probably insufficient. Things are moving so much faster, especially since you're much more technology intensive than back in the days when somebody before me came up with the idea of make it last 10 years. So I think that's something we need to think hard about. And that would also, if we just reject that idea, it gives us the opportunity to maybe do something now and not say, well, you're stuck for 10 years. So we could do something now, perhaps. I still don't know what that looks like, with the idea that we're going to revisit it. That would require, extensive engagement with the library system. And I will tell you, one of the problems here, I'm in agreement with several comments from both my colleagues, but Commissioner Nieder is correct. The amount of time that was provided for this is really insufficient. I know historically we received a lot more advance notice, and there's a lot to digest there. I know in looking through the presentation, I have a bunch of questions. Some are more important than others. Didn't cover all of them just because of all of the other pressing needs. But there's a number of things in there I'd like to enter into discussion with you folks about. And if we were to do something today, and we don't have to do something today, Ron, I'm going to ask you that next. What is our schedule? What kind of time do we have? I know you prefer it all together, but Carolyn, I would ask that, do we have that opportunity that's been lost here to sit down and talk to you about what this does get you and how long this may last? And what comes next, so we can engage in a little more long range thinking. So we've had some history going back quite a ways, where once the library got the money, it's like, okay, commissioners, go away. So, and I mean, there just wasn't a lot of engagement because there wasn't required. Once it's your money, it's your money, and we can ask questions, and we've always gotten some level of response, but not detailed engagement. So I think we've got kind of two options. We can either revisit, do we have enough time to look at this in more depth now and revisit before the budget deadline and essentially bifurcate the general fund and the library increase requests. And if we get ourselves a little bit more time, can we address anything meaningful in that period of time? So, but I think we're really going to need to know in the future that if there's going to be a request coming in 3 years, 4 years, whatever, I mean, we need 8 or 9 or 10 months to really kind of work through a number of issues with you on that. We're at a disadvantage here for sure on this. And that makes, I think, all of us kind of uncomfortable because we're not exactly sure what we're signing on to. And in the past, frankly, we had a very conscious effort to keep general fund increases away from library increases and away from reassessments. And I don't know that that's realistic anymore. That's going to be a matter of discussion for the Board of Commissioners, I guess. But so I'm open to more review if we think we can use the time meaningfully to get answers to some of these questions. But it's kind of nebulous to know at what point we'll have enough information. I mean, you never have all the information you want, but so I just put that out that we could do something today, or we can defer this for another, Ron, how long do we have?
So we could place a budget on view today with nothing for the library, no change for the library, and then we would have up until budget approval to modify it. It's
Okay.
within the requirements, allowances to make a change for the library at a later date.
So you couldn't do a final approval on the budget and then revisit library
I
after?
think that would be a reopening then.
Which we can't do. You can't reopen.
Is that really a reopening? They're such completely separate functions, but if you say it is, it is.
So what he was saying is you have up until you approve the budget.
So between
General fund.
today and December 11th.
So these really are joined at the hip.
Yeah, when
Okay.
the budget is approved, an ordinance must be approved that sets both millage rates at the same time, and per Keith, they have to be stated in the same ordinance.
They can't be two separate ordinances.
Correct.
Okay, I learned something today. That's very interesting. Okay, well, that tells us it wouldn't buy us a whole lot of time, frankly. So I guess we would need to evaluate what types of questions we have to really get an answer on whether buying more time buys us enough time. So I guess I leave that to my colleagues. Would they prefer to take action now or get more answers?
So I stated, I was prepared today, Carolyn, to move forward with your 0.332 millage rate request, the cost to the taxpayer of $36.85 per year. And I did say that as the liaison to the library system for the past 5 years, I really know that I understand what you do. My colleagues, I think, are a little more data driven. And so I understand that they are reticent at this point in time because they don't have the data that they need, if I'm hearing them both correctly. I can't remember what day it was that we first met, Carolyn. And I know that you and a group have had individual meetings with all of the commissioners. I know that we've had several group meetings. So I would like to know, I'm interested in what the questions are from my colleagues. I'd like to know the answers as well. And I'm hopeful that we can move forward this year, because I don't think you get through next year with nothing. I don't think you get through next year with what you have right now. So I think it's important that something happen.
I am, with all due respect, Commissioner Fashi, I am not comfortable with their current allocation appears to be roughly $4.5 million. To take that to $9 million in funding without a really solid plan as to what those needs are and how that's going to be used. I am not committed. I'm not prepared to take an action at that level at all. I am prepared to consider some action, but again, and I appreciate, I am interested in numbers, and I would prefer to have more questions answered surrounding that so that we hone in on what is the need and what is the need today, what's the need next year, what's the need, and see where we run to with that. I don't know if that can be done within the timeline. We can certainly try. I would make every effort to do that. But the timeline that I've been given with this, is not adequate for me. So at this juncture, it would be my preference to obtain more information with the goal to have some decisioning prior to the final budget approval. So I don't know that we need to table that if it's part of the motion, if anyone else is inclined.
So if we could set a timetable for us to say, this is when Carolyn needs to have our questions, this is when we need to have the answers back in order to meet that deadline, that would be one way to move forward. That would, give us at least an opportunity to know more than we know now. I like data too, but in this case, I think it's more just a matter of, I want to be a good consumer, or maybe more accurately, a good financier. We're putting public money up on this. We should be asking, exactly what we're getting for it. And normally we've been able to address these in isolation, but there's a whole host of challenges on the table right now. So it's kind of tough to agree to a 38, and I knew these figures are somewhat bogus, quite frankly, because they're pinned to an average. $38 and then approve another action that's adding a heck of a lot more than that to the tax bill at the same time. And I'm not worried about how uncomfortable that makes me feel. I'm worried about how uncomfortable that's going to make a lot of citizens feel. So if we could punt on this one for just a short period of time, I agree with Commissioner Fauci. I don't think you can get by with nothing, but we need to figure out what we do need and how much you need till we have better information for a longer term solution. So that goes to my point that, yeah, the 10 years is that's probably an obsolete practice. Does that make sense?
I have not seen the MOU, so,
I can send you a copy of it.
I would need to see as well in this process. So, so it appears that will not be a decision being made on the library tax at this moment.
I don't think it needs to be tabled because does it?
You do not need to table anything to list it that way, so the place the budget on view can include any changes in either millage that the board wishes.
I would just want to know what the next steps are and what those dates would be for us to.
Yeah, and I think we should hammer those out right now, because it is very easy to sit in this room and say, we're going to get our questions to Carolyn, we're going to get our answers, and we don't do it.
Well, Jean,
So-
I take exception to that on this issue from the standpoint that I did see the email from Carolyn briefly as I was tied
Me
up all
too.
morning and
Me
did
too.
not get a chance to digest it. It looked as though there was some good information. I had questions about the hours. When you say you have a minimum number that you have to be open, and I glanced briefly, and if that number is 45 and Bosler is 60, well, maybe there is room to scale back hours. I don't know. I don't have enough information to know. Maybe Bosler needs 75. I don't know.
But
And so-
Carolyn can provide that, but I think we have to really, Carolyn, I hope you don't take offense to this because I'm not trying to be offensive. I think this is probably the first time that the board has asked all of these questions, and they're good questions. I think they're good questions, Carolyn. I don't know that when you started at the beginning of this, I don't know that you've had the tools to get these answers. And I think moving forward, maybe that's something that we can work on with finance, getting you the tools to track this kind of information on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, so that we can really know what's going on and be ready for your quarterly updates. I think that's very important, but I have heard a hesitancy to even come and ask. And you're nodding at me. Yes, there has been a hesitancy. And so when there's a hesitancy, I think sometimes I know that if I'm hesitant about something, I have not come loaded for bear, right? I don't come ready to be passionate, as passionate as I need to in my ask. And I have to wonder if maybe some of that has happened. I think there's an opportunity to work this out. So please, when my colleagues send you their questions, and I'll probably have a couple too, we got to get those back right away though, with good answers. And I think that one of the things you could do, Carolyn, if you're asked a question, you're not sure how to answer it, call either one of them and say, okay, let's talk this through. I need some help. I know Dana is at the ready to assist. I know Angela is, I know Stacy is. So I think there's a lot of help to get us through to what we need to do.
Jean, I think you make an excellent point. And again, not having prior experience as to how these things transpired, or I think the candor you've seen here, Carolyn, is the way that I hope we can continue to conduct as a board. in our engagement with the library, knowing that you have people that want to help. We just want to do the right thing for the residents and for the library system. So we'll set up a meeting and we'll try and get that in within hopefully next week. And we can maybe go down through some of the questions that you've answered already in the email. But I didn't have an opportunity to review it fully and have continue the conversation. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn. So that leaves us to discuss our budget. And Ron, you and Carrie, you both have done a great job in giving us options. I know the suggestion was for a 7% increase. A couple of things as I've been doing my digging have come to mind, but I would like to hear what my colleagues have to say in regard to this, because I have my own thoughts on what I think may be required of this board at this time. So, Commissioner Eichelberger, I believe you had concerns that with the approach that was taken for this budgetary year, 2024.
Yes, I did. I'm not sure what they ask at this point.
Do you believe we need to do anything as it relates to the budget and our millage rate?
I'm not sure I can answer that. I mean, we just did 15% in January. That's not a small amount. And now what's being put on the table is not a one-time 7%. It's 7 followed by 7, followed by a nebulous number that's fluctuated. I've heard 4, then I've heard 10. And I have expressed my concerns all along about, I think, missed opportunities to contain costs. And I think those are serious issues that maybe have not been taken seriously enough. So I have deep reservations.
So that doesn't necessarily help with understanding what's in our court right now. So I don't disagree that, and from my perspective, I believe some of the items that have been contemplated for out beyond 25, 26, 27, 28. I think that's a bit suspect. The assumptions out that far, assuming that 911 funding won't be increased or will be decreased. I think maybe I believe you held it flat, and that the prison was not going to, continue to provide revenue from housing people. So realistically, for us to make decisions for 26, 27, 28 in this time period is very challenging. Quite frankly, 2024 was a hole. And when you find yourself in a hole, the first thing you need to do is stop digging. And quite frankly, I believe that's what we've done over the course of the year, quite capably by a lot of departments. I can certainly cite a number of those, but what we have done over the course of the year that was set in motion prior to my joining the board was we have added in 2025 an additional $6 million to an already deficient budget. That's $2.2 million in our payments for the bonds for the P25 radio, and an additional $3 million on a capital project for this year, and another $3 million yet next year. So that additional $6 million, it's actually, I believe, 3.8 in the Lawson project. that's remaining for this year. That additional $6 million to a structurally deficient budget is challenging. That we can't ignore. And I certainly did a bit of research related to positions that were added. As you've indicated, Gary, that I am rubber stamping the addition of staff. Where it has happened has been over the past 3 years. There's been 119 new positions created, on average 40 a year. This year, we have contained that to 18, 9 of which were children and youth at this juncture. That's at 80% funding. So a lot of work, quite frankly, has been done. And it doesn't protect us from going forward. But I have a thought of where I believe we need to do, what we need to do and what action we need to take. But would be interested if you have anything to offer on those comments.
We have addressed most of those comments in the past. If you see that very differently.
We've had a 10-year P25 radio project that we didn't seek funding for during the lowest bond market, perhaps in history, but at least in the last 40 years. We've layered on debt. We've grown, the county has grown and expanded. We have deferred capital. We've done that this year, quite frankly. We are deferring some capital projects just because of the large amount of expense. But we have made serious changes in the way that the county does business to get us to a projected use in fund balance management of only $1.3 million. That was good work by a lot of people at the county. But we cannot continue layering on $6 million worth of additional debt in the next budget year. Our top 5 deficiencies by department beginning at 911, and this doesn't include capital, is a $14 million structural deficit that we're not receiving adequate funding on. So it is my suggestion that this board consider a 4% increase to cover only essentially the costs of the bond financing that was put into place. And we have to work through the rest. I know that the finance team has expressed an interest in wanting to retain a lot of the one-time money. And while we have preserved that, it is meant to be used. And I believe in the projection, you're looking at 9 million in additional funding, of which just shy of 4 is for county grant program. So really using about $5.1 million of our remaining $8 million balance of one-time money to retain our position. That's what we have to crack. We have to find $5 million in ongoing operating. And so I believe a 4% will be just slightly over about just shy of 3 million.
2.7.
2.75, I was thinking. To help cover the debt obligation that we've laid into the budget and provide a bit more. But if you're not going to offer other solutions as to what to cut, or what your thoughts are as it relates to addressing the deficit going forward, I'm not sure where the conversation's going to go.
Vashi, do you have anything that you would like to discuss? Well, you know, this is tough. This is tough stuff, really tough. And Commissioner Eichelberger, you had a conversation with Kelly and I the other day where you said that we have not come to you to ask for what you want. And I said to you, what do you want? What is your compromise? And you have not answered the question. And for you to have said, you don't come to me and ask me for what I want, you've got something that you do want. And you've had a lot of opportunity to put that out. So now's the time. It's kind of like a speak now or forever hold your peace issue at this point in time. We're either assisting with the delivery of mandated services that we do not get enough money from the state to handle, or we're not. And if we're not going to assist and raise and do something with millage or to get more revenue, because the only way county government gets revenue is with a millage rate increase, or we use grants. And we have a grant administrator who's doing a really great job, but as I remember correctly, Gary, you weren't interested in that position.
No, it's not, that's
So,
not accurate. Most of what you've been saying is totally inaccurate. But
Okay.
go ahead.
So I am interested in your thoughts, your opinion on this, because I haven't heard it. And if you don't want to raise revenue, what do you want to cut? Because that's where we're at. That is where we're at.
Everything you've asked for, I have spoken to an executive session. So it's never received a,
Yeah, that's-
fair hearing.
That's not accurate.
Yeah, it's not accurate. And it's not accurate in a way that makes it very difficult to do this job. Because you have been here for 21 years. In 21 years, you have most certainly been a part of millage rate increases in the past. You have.
Mhm.
I think 6 times, if I'm remembering correctly. So this is not a foreign conversation to you. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's doubling down on something. I don't know if you just don't like us and you don't want to be part of anything productive. And that's okay, but we've got to move something forward. And for someone who's been here for 21 years, it would be nice if you put something forward. It would be good. It would be considered.
I think it's all been said.
So it's silence. You are silent on this. You are silent. Commissioner Niederer, having looked at the materials that the finance team has delivered to us, having had conversations with our chief financial officer, I can move forward with a 4%. And it does cover that, right? It does. I don't know where it leaves us in a couple of years. I don't. I think there's a lot of things at play and we have to see some things work out. And I have to speak to this because part of me wants me to ask you to put that interactive up on the board. Again, because we've done it over and over and over again in this room during public meetings. So this has been laid out for all of us as to, you do this millage rate increase, this is what's going to happen to your general fund. You do this millage, you don't, this is what happens, right? This is what's going to happen to your fund balance. I've had taxpayers say to me, I don't understand why you have to keep all those days of fund balance, right? And that's a legitimate question, a really legitimate question. And I wondered that when I first got here, I was like, man, we're holding on to a lot of money. And then I lived through COVID. I've lived through the threat of federal government shutdown. I have lived now through the state budget not being passed on time. I've lived through the state budget being passed, but no one has written the bill that tells you how you can spend the money. And I have lived through Deer County You have to provide these services. But we have not given you an increase in revenue. The state has not given us an increase in revenue in 12, 13, 14 years. Increase in population, increasing demand. What do? We can't go sell stuff, right? Like, I can't have a cookie sale.
We can get grants, Jean.
We can't get grants.
grants that have not been obtained before.
I was a piece of that
Yes,
vote to bring
As
that
was
grant
I.
administrator in, yes. That's really important.
It is.
And she's working very hard, but it's still not enough. It is still not enough. And this will not be the final time I say this, though. So we can do incremental increases. We can do all kinds of things to manage a budget. But how are we could never county tax the people of Cumberland County out of some of this stuff. It's just not possible. The state is not coming to the table and meeting us at the table on this. And I will not stop saying that, because you've got to have someone to answer the call at 911. If you don't have someone there, what happens? Right? All we do is provide human services. And the money from the state for those mandated human services is just not here. So I can go with 4%. I know people are hurting. I know that inflation has been terrible. I know that wages, even though we want them to keep up, they don't always keep up. I know that. I look around. I go to Target and I look around at what people are doing, what people are buying, what people are driving. Right? There's a lot going on in this county. But I don't make it any better if you need mental health care and I go, well, we can't afford that. I don't make that any better for anyone. I don't make your life any better. I don't help you out. I cost you money. That's it. That's all I have.
Yeah, I am interested in what solutions you're offering at this time.
Well, the one thing I would add is that, just as we've been told by finance almost every year that I've been here, is the earlier you make decisions, the more impact it's going to have. And there have been options put on the table for years, and particularly in January, that I believed was probably the last chance to get things under control. And they were pretty specific. They were just the beginning, but I almost feel as if those things are too late now. So I don't know I have a clear answer, but I know I don't want to validate a process that sure appears like it's just going to result in a return to annual tax increases for the county. So the time to find the answers, unfortunately, seems to be long past.
Yeah, 10 years ago, perhaps, but I can't make up for lack of planning and preparation in 9 months.
Yeah,
For
you
what?
want to keep going to that, and yet
Yeah.
our days of operation numbers, but that's what the board has always used as guidance. We've always been well above the GFOA recommendation, sometimes almost 50%.
You can fund that many different ways. You do a bond funding and you've got 15 million extra in there. You have COVID money. You've got, 74 million.
And that
extra
was with the COVID one backed out, was it not?
No, the cash flow though, it's not backed out. Gary, you've been around a long time.
Yeah, I've done 21 of these budgets for the county and 14 for the municipality. Public sector budgeting is not new to me.
Okay, so what's our burn rate then? What are we spending on a month?
Well, that number's been moving up, so I don't know exactly what it is.
Okay, we spend 10 million every 2 weeks to pay payables and 2 million in roughly 2 million in pension or in benefits and wages. That's a number that we should all know. We have, over the past year, done a lot to try and remedy. And we don't have the option of saying it's too late to do anything and throwing up our hands, because that simply will not work. I'm going to highlight a few things because I think it's insulting to every employee to say that nothing has been done and nothing can be done. People that have worked incredibly hard to change the course. And one of the large items that this board did was eliminating the bonuses for 2024. That was very difficult to do. But it did save the taxpayers approximately $500,000. That program, since its implementation, has cost the taxpayers $2.3 million. So that is not going to be happening in future budgets. We are seeking grants for the mobile 911 backup center that was budgeted originally at $1 million. We have reduced conference travel, training, and supply usage. Annie is doing a fantastic job trying to address the mental health contracts. We have had to defer capital projects that we can. The prison has done a fantastic job of, quite frankly, generating revenue through bringing on the care and custody of other counties' prisoners. We have eliminated positions that showed up in the budget that had been approved, some of them for as long as 5 years. So my contention has been, if something's open for 5 years, I don't believe that that position is exactly necessary. That was done through the work that we've done with finance over the year. 911 used a regional phone system that was a significant savings. Well, there's been an emphasis to hire part-time where possible. And those are just a few items that came to mind. I know that when we were undertaking the original budget, my colleague elected to not engage in this conversation. So I think it's positive that you are somewhat engaging, but released a statement that was talking about a hiring freeze. And that seems to be, as Jean, you've indicated, we get a lot of times people will reach out and say, well, you need to freeze hiring. Well, quite frankly, when you're running a 911 center, when you're running a children and youth department, a prison, you cannot freeze hiring. You need a certain number of people to perform those services. Another suggestion that was made was freeze salaries for 6 months, which I find really fascinating because salaries at the county, you can say that you'll do that for the first 6 months of any year, but quite frankly, all raises are basically allocated in July. So that's a nonsensical claim. And those items that seem easy on the surface, in fact, are really quite difficult. And the group here has done, and finance, you've done an amazing job in really honing in on the numbers, helping us understand for those of us that engaged with you. And I feel very positive going forward that if this board continues to watch the capital projects, closely monitor the contingency, seek grants. And I am a little worried. You've been very conservative with your expense increases. So we've got to watch those. I appreciate the conservative nature, but it's a concern and it can wallop us. So I believe that if we're able to at least cover the costs of the debt that we've laid into it, we've got to figure out the capital, and we can right the ship. It takes a long time to turn a tanker, and I know you've all heard me say that before, but that's the approach that I'm going to take. So much for my diatribe. Thank you for your patience. And Commissioner, if you are willing to make a motion, I would appreciate it.
I have a question before I do this, because since we're not dealing with the library tax until later this month, can I make a motion today? We can do this.
So the motion would be to place the budget on view with a 4% increase in the county millage.
Thank you.
And Ron, just so that I'm clear, what does that 4% equate to for individuals on the average?
$22.42.
Okay, and that's an annual.
Yep,
That's
on a,
annual.
on a home valued at 222,000.
And I believe that if your chart still, even if we updated that, that would still have us being, if not the lowest per capita payment, it would be close. It would be second to lowest or similar counties. I didn't have the exact numbers, but
We can run the numbers for you and give it to you.
are we
I think still the lowest, but we'll double check.
still the, okay, I'm hopeful.
It's close.
It's I know, it would be close. For on a per capita basis, I believe it was.
That wouldn't include any numbers for 24, so other counties have also done millage changes. It wouldn't include that.
That's true. Thank you, Dana.
So I'm going to move to lay the 2025 budget on view, showing a 4% increase in millage rate. So the new millage would be 2.625.
Correct.
Is there interest, Gary, in seconding that motion?
There's not.
I will second that motion. So there's a motion on the table. Any further discussion?
Again, Commissioner Eichelberger, the silence is deafening. It would be good to know what you're thinking, what you think would work here, other than nothing.
My suggestion to would be show up, do the job people are paying you to do, and
I'm here funny. I don't know where you get that. You run all around the county like part of a hailstorm. So tell everybody how important you are. I'm here a lot of times you aren't. So I'm here when I need to be. I'm here a lot. And you know what?
So
You keep bragging about remote work for everybody else. I can remote work. I don't need 10 hours to learn an issue. I've been here long enough. I don't need 10 hours to spend with every issue.
well, apparently you didn't have adequate time to complete the plan, the performance plan that we asked you to in February.
I
But
did.
there's a motion on the table.
It wasn't me.
All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Aye,
No.
thank
Fact.
you. So,
Again, if you're gonna be a fat no, moving forward, it'd be good to know what your ideas are. And I fully expect, Commissioner Eichelberger, that you have already put together your email to the press, letting the press know what you think about this, but we don't know. I fully expect that that has happened.
is there any other business to come before the board at this time? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
We're adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.